Hello, and welcome to our weekly digital strategy chat brought to you by Denver Data Web. We are a digital strategy company. We help our clients overcome their unique challenges and with a goals-focused approach to web development, web design, and digital marketing. I'm Sarah Joswiak. I'm the digital marketing analyst at Denver Data Web, and with me we have David.
Hi, everybody. David Zonka, digital strategist here at Denver Data Web.
And Jessica.
Well, hello, Jessica Olma with Scribe Syndicate, digital content writing.
Today, our topic is how to create compelling content. We've talked about content quite a bit in the past. We did a chat a few months back about how not to sound like a robot in your content, and snippets here and there in other chats just about creating content. Content seems to be a challenging task for a lot of people, and people kind of end up getting confused. They're not really sure where to start. We get a lot of questions from clients and site visitors about how to create really compelling content and how to do it in a streamlined fashion that's consistent with SEO and just with different types of content creation. So join with us here today. We have content specialist Jessica Olma. Jessica is also from the Denver area, and she's going to walk us through how to create compelling content, along with Jessica's personal process for content creation. So Jessica, let's start with some signs that maybe your content needs some work. Can you start us off with that?
Okay, sure. Well, part of the problem shows up when you're noticing that you're posting things, but your visitors don't seem to be reading them or engaging with them. So you're not seeing likes, you're not seeing comments, they're not sharing, they're not taking any kind of an action. So they're not intrigued by what it is that you have to say. Your content also might not be showing up in searches. Your marketing consultant may be actually telling you that the copy that you do have could be reworked and maybe contain some more SEO components to help drive traffic. So if you're spending time on this content and it's not working, then you might want to look at getting a writer or editor to do that for you.
So you mentioned something very interesting, that it's not showing up in searches and it doesn't have those SEO components that are necessary. Why might working with a marketing company in the first place help to develop that marketing theme or strategy?
Well, they're going to talk about where your content should show up, how much content you need, and what types of content you're going to use, because there's going to be an entire strategy or theme that they're following. So, and that's all to keep consistent messaging. It's to make sure that all of your messaging is relevant, that it crosses, into different areas of promotion versus education, supporting both existing clients and bringing in new leads. So there's a lot going on there that your marketing team can be helping you with, so that you have a sense of direction, so you can achieve an actual goal of greater visibility.
And when you say marketing team, that doesn't necessarily mean that team has a content specialist on staff. At Denver Data Web, we do offer content writing services. However, sometimes if it's like pages and pages of content, not only us, but other marketing teams may not have the bandwidth to create that much content. So in that way, Jessica, you're saying that hiring a writer is a really great idea in addition to your regular marketing team, correct?
It definitely is, because you have someone that you can work with directly to figure out exactly how you want to say things and how you want to come across. It also speeds up the process. If you don't have the time to do any research on your topic, even if you know a topic really well, you might still want to look at what other people are saying in the industry about that topic, and sort of weave that into what you have to say. If you don't have time to do that research and then fully edit it to make sure that it's looking its very best, then you really should develop a relationship with a writer who can get to know you and your personality and your business, and have those things ready for you on a monthly basis, weekly basis, whatever it is you're trying to do.
And one of the things that I've heard people say in the past when it comes to like content marketing and stuff is maybe you guys have heard that. You heard that content is king. You ever heard people like say that in the marketing space? it seemed like back in the day, like when SEO was starting to become more and more important to your, content was already important, and articles and creating blog posts was how people did that. And then, other things that came about like social media, and then we got more and more stuff going into video. But it seems to me, and I'm really curious to get your take on this, Jessica, I feel like the written aspect has never really become somehow less important. Like that's always been pretty critical, right?
Yeah, the way I look at it is you do need a mix of different types of content because people think differently and they absorb information differently. So even if you have a great video, you may want a script. If you have a great blog, you still might want to have a podcast on it. So by combining all those things, you are able to get I think, a larger audience interested in what you have to say.
You've probably seen a lot, I imagine, working with so many different clients over the years and helping people improve and fix their content. And, that might be the right word. I saw an interesting bit of research. So it goes back to like 2016. I mean, that's a few years ago, but at the Content Marketing Institute and in their survey, they're rating various B2B marketers and rating their organization's content marketing. Only 6% of them rated their content marketing as very effective. That's not too encouraging, is it?
No, it's not. And I don't think it's because they don't know what to do. It's because they're not doing it. Most of the time, it's about getting the processes together, like you do at Denver Data Web, and developing that strategy and organizing it to go out at certain times and knowing that that's getting done. So hiring the right experts to get your content out there and to make sure that you're on task. So especially when it comes to the larger companies, they certainly know what they should be doing. It's just whether or not they're actually doing it. So again, finding the right experts to make sure you do that.
You think it could be a little that the cobbler's children have no shoes, that kind of scenario? I feel like Sarah, you experience this a lot, trying to juggle between doing stuff for client accounts and things like even working on our own.
Yeah. So doing internal marketing, swapping back and forth between working on client marketing and then doing internal marketing, sometimes it does kind of have that, oh, I already did this today, or, oh, I don't want to do this again. So it does kind of have, I know what you're saying with that. Yeah. So Jessica, say that you've hired a marketing company and you have your strategy together, but you just can't afford to hire a writer to move on from there. What are some tips just the average Joe, someone who's not great at writing, can do to create their own content?
Well, today it's never been easier to put some information together for a typical 500 or 1,000 word blog article, or even content on your website. And all you need to do is Google the topics, look for a few different articles on the topic that you want to do, and make sure that wherever you're going, that these are reputable people in the industry. So it does matter where you pull your information from. So just double check that. Make sure that you use 3 or 4 different sources to put something together. I know a lot of people will probably, and I do this myself, copy paste information and put it on one document and start to parse through it. So if you're going to be doing that, just know that you're going to completely rearrange it into your own words. You should have a title in mind that will keep you on track as to what you're supposed to be talking about, because it's really easy to go off on tangents. So after you've dumped all of your resource information onto a document, you're going to create the headline, and then you're going to start to create different subheads that'll keep you going in the right direction. And that also helps you make sure that you're doing little bite-sized pieces of information, because in this day and age, no one has the attention span or the time to read something thoroughly. They're probably, even if they're interested, they're going to probably speed read through it. So make it easy for them. do some bullet points, separate things out, the subheadings, let them know what this paragraph is going to be about. And then at the end of that, then you're going to polish it up, which may take running it through a duplicate content check, which I use copyscape.com. Recommend it. It's not expensive at all to use. Or Grammarly Pro also offers that kind of check for plagiarism, basically, and make sure that you have 100% original material. And Grammarly, again, is something that I use to make sure that small errors don't get made, like punctuation that's missing, a misspelled word, things like that, that you just want to make sure that it's polished before it goes out. And for any content, I recommend at least one image. So there's a lot of free image sites out there. You can go to places like Pixabay and Unsplash, or you can go to Deposit Photos. And you can, if you want better selections, you can always upgrade to get things like that. Biggest recommendation I have for this entire process is to do your research on one day, do your outline on another, and do the polish later on, because it's just so much to be thinking about all at once that it can get overwhelming, and you get tired of looking at it. And that's when you make mistakes.
Yeah.
So give yourself plenty of time.
Looking at it with fresh eyes,
Yes.
Is what I like to call it. Well, that's cool. So it sounds like that's a process that you really know and trust. Do you use the same process yourself?
I definitely use that process because I can get really fatigued going over a lot of different topics throughout the week. So I have days that are scheduled for research and scheduled for the outlines, and then scheduled again for the polishing and pulling the images. So I don't try and do that whole thing all in one day. That would be exhausting for the volume of work that I do. And I just think it would make it easier for anyone if they're not used to writing to know that they don't have to do it all in one day.
Absolutely. And that's also good to know that giving yourself time is not a bad thing, because I know that especially when I'm writing content, sometimes the hardest part is starting it, just getting it going. And by the time I do have the flow of things, and I like some of your pieces of your process I use exactly also. So I thought that was interesting. But I do kind of get that anxiety when I'm getting through it, and it's really coming together, and I reach an end of my day and I just haven't finished it yet. So being able to remind myself that doing it over the course of a few days is probably best in the long run also.
I think you'll find that you like what you've written better by taking the time to step away from it and then come back.
Yep. It can be so easy and tempting to press that publish button or to copy everything into a website.
Say, I'm done.
Yay. But it seems like it's probably a good idea not to do that and not to rush through it. That's great. Well, that sounds great. David, did you have any other questions for Jessica?
Yeah, let's dive back in a little bit about, what makes the content compelling. We talked a little bit about the structure and way you go about writing it, which it seems to me that's a big piece, right? Because if you don't have a good format for how you go about writing it, you have probably more of a chance that what you put together is not going to be very cohesive, or potentially even make sense, or having a good background to it. I'm curious what you think might be the those kind of different steps that you outline. My intuition is research might be one of the most important steps there. Would you agree? I mean, what do you think about that? And in terms of having that base of material that's actually going to grab people's attention.
I definitely feel that's a really important part of the process, because even when you really think you know the topic, there's going to be things that come up in your search for material that you hadn't considered including, or forgot about, or maybe didn't know about too, and you're learning something as you go. So don't discount taking that volume of information and then condensing it down to the brass tacks of what you really want to deliver to your audience. But starting with a bigger picture and then condensing it down is, I believe, the best way to go, because then you can really pick and choose what you think are the most important pieces to your audience and to your industry and your business.
Definitely.
I
You know,
know
there's kind of
that.
like a little maxim that I've used like back in the day, like when it came to like writing stuff. As I mean, trying to, there's like three different things you had to, you pick one, you got to do it, right? So if you're writing content to go out there on the web, it's either got to, what is it? You got to make somebody laugh, or you got to evoke some kind of emotion, like, yes, you know, maybe scare them, or you know, something like that. I mean, that doesn't sound so great, but that works, right? I mean,
Your tactics, yeah.
or you got to teach them something or how to like solve a problem, right? Have you ever used that? I mean, what is your take on that sort of
Absolutely, yeah, and
approach?
that's more of a narrative type of writing. And in this day and age, it's really important because we always talk about authenticity, and the best authenticity to me is to tell an actual story of something that you experienced, and that usually does evoke emotion because you're showing a story where, you know, you met with a client and this was the situation and this was their pain point and they were struggling, and you came up with this solution, and in the end this is what the result was. And I think the more you share those kinds of stories over a period of time, people start to really connect. But sooner or later you're going to hit a story that really resonates with them, and that's what's going to make them want to engage with you and work with you and try your solution. So, and it may be a story that's a little scary, you know, like what could go wrong if you don't have this particular service or product in place. And then there's the stories that are just hilarious, you know, like the myriad of things that can go wrong. That, you know, you had this client that, you know, something really bizarre happened, and it probably wouldn't happen to you, but it's really, it makes a person laugh and say, well, you know, anything can happen.
They probably hope
So,
it won't happen, right?
yeah, and humor is one of the best ways, I think, to connect with people anyway.
See, I
So,
feel like it makes them really relatable, right? I mean, hey, they're people too. Not everything goes right, you know. It's putting it out
right.
there.
I have to say it's less intimidating, even for me as a consumer, when I realize that other business owners have made mistakes. And here's what they did as a result of it. This is why our processes are the way they are today, because we made this mistake in the past and we learned from it, and now we're better for it. So you don't have to feel like you have to be the one to present things properly and correctly all the time either. That, you know, sometimes things are going to go wrong, and it's how you move forward from that point. So those are good stories too.
You know, Sarah, I know from my side, like, you know, when I'm involved in kind of like the sales part of the business, that sort of thing, like storytelling is a very useful component of that. It's not just like trying to manipulate people. It's like people relate to stories, you know, explaining like, hey, here's a scenario that seems very similar to yours. And so this lets me think that this can work out for you in a similar way and in a good way. You know, I feel like on some level, like storytelling, like we're talking about, can be really powerful in marketing and a way to get really compelling content. You know, is that like a tactic, kind of a marketing strategy that you've seen work well in the past, Sarah?
Yes, actually, in that same idea too, often the blogs that I write for DDW will be based on conversations we had also in meetings. So, and I often structure the flow that way too. So I guess that's kind of different from an actual story, but, and I'll go back to that in just a second, but it just kind of made me think off on this tangent. A lot of times just the natural flow of conversation becomes a very easily readable piece of content. So yeah, absolutely. But then David, going back to a story making a great piece of content in the exact same idea of what I was just saying, the natural flow of a story becomes a much more readable piece of content. So there's a lot to be said for that.
Absolutely. You know, what you're saying about not always just the story itself, but just a conversational tone. I think more people will relate to that too. And that even goes into, you know, keywords and phrases and things like that you have to work into your copy. the terminology that you use should be at the level of your own audience. You know, if you're talking to industry experts versus a general audience that knows nothing about what you do, being conversational and using the terms that they would use so that they understand what you're saying. And I can't think of an example off the top of my head, except to say that there's been some technical pieces that I've done for a company that did scientific refrigerators, and others that were structural engineers. And talking to a general audience about those things can be difficult to make that conversational. And it's all about terminology. Sometimes when people have so much education in an area, they make it difficult for people to connect with them. And again, having a writer or someone else just go over the copy and say, I don't know what you're talking about here. Can you make it a little more user-friendly?
Yeah.
So yeah, that conversational piece along with the storytelling works really well.
And when that happens, Jessica, is there a great way to bring back in those keywords? If you're kind of talking in more layman's terms, I guess, would you say that the keywords come naturally in that way, or that you would have to go back and edit to include those keywords for SEO value?
I tend to put my topics and concepts together before adding the keywords, but knowing that I'm going to have to reformat or restructure a sentence once I decide to plug those keywords in. And the keywords will go in places where I've already put words in that are similar. So I know that I can make it flow properly. But like I said, I'll have to probably rewrite a sentence in order to make that sound the way it needs to sound. And that's just to make sure, because I actually go back through and search the terms that I'm using for a keyword situation and make sure that it shows up at least 2 times in the body and at least once in the title, and whether or not we're using like a primary keyword and then secondary keywords, I'll have to check for those as well. So it's hard to remember all that as you're writing naturally, but you know the places that you can go back and plug them in. And then again, like I said, just rework the copy to make it sound natural. Because if you don't make it sound natural, then it gets to that robotic tone where you think maybe the copy was generated by artificial intelligence or something like that, and that nobody's really home.
Yeah.
People keep telling me like, oh, that's how it's going to be done at some point. I was like, I don't know. I don't believe it.
I feel like there's always going to have to be some human intervention, because if you're talking to humans.
Yeah, you know, I did an article months ago, and I was really surprised because the companies that I wrote about have since been in touch with me to let me know that they've improved their services. But the artificial writing intelligence that's out there, great for creating a rough outline is what it's really good for. It does not pick up context very well. So you'll see things that don't make sense. There's things that are repetitive because it's pulled the same information from different blogs, but it's almost identical. And it doesn't sound like a native English speaking person put it together, because it's the sentence structure isn't how we would say things. Grammar is out of whack. So yeah, you need someone to go back in and edit that mess into something that looks like a Native American wrote it.
Well, great. All that sounds really great. And by Native American, you mean someone who was born in America, correct? Oh
yeah, someone who's born in the U.S., which also brings me to the topic of hiring people off of freelance platforms that, you know, they might be in other areas of the country, and you need someone who is fluent in English if your audience is going to be in English-speaking countries. And word of caution there, you will have to correct their syntax, context, grammar, everything, because it just doesn't sound like we would say things. And so you have to work that into the pricing when you're looking for someone who seems a little inexpensive. You think you can work with that, but you will have to do more work.
So still great for a rough outline, but would need a little bit of work.
Right. So yeah, you can either try someone like that on Fiverr, Upwork, or whatever, that's in another country for a rough outline or use artificial intelligence. They can pull that information that you need rather quickly based on keywords that you give the platform. So, but again, you want to heavily edit because it won't be professional or polished in any way.
One of the things
All
I
right.
found is you can try and save money on some things, but you're going to pay for it later. At
In
some
time
point.
or money, yeah, eventually. So you can put money into it up front, or you can pay a little bit more later in time and energy. So.
Well, thank you, Jessica. We've covered a lot today. It looks like we're at the end of our time. Look for our digital strategy chat each week at this time, or we'll post this one later. So each week on Fridays at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Be sure to check back on our website at denverdata.com or our YouTube channel, which you can now find at denverdata.com/YouTube. And be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much and have a great weekend.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely, Jessica. Thank you for joining us.